I was looking on eBay and I came across this nice table saw, so I went out with the car and picked it up. It just fit in barely. The table saw is quite heavy, so I really like that, as it's a solid table that way and I don't have to worry about breaking it or tilting it over or anything. The saw was quite original. It's a Wadkin Bursgreen AGS 12 inch and it has a 5 horsepower motor, which is plenty of power. It's as original as it gets. The only thing that isn't original is the color, as the previous owner decided to color it in blue and I like to bring it back to green, as I like green a lot better for workshop equipment. Green is also the original color, so it would make a really nice original machine again. The saw has all the original guidances. That way the table saw guide rail can be moved over easily, and it also has measurements in millimeters, which is nice as this is an English saw, but I really need millimeters as we work with the metric system. It also has 2 slides in the table, that way I'm able to make a sled to go over and I can make really nice cuts in a safe way without having to worry about my hands. So I really like that, as it's a safe way of sawing. Now let's start by taking it apart. So we already took the table off and now we can take the complete mechanism out of the table saw, because I want to clean it all up, as at this moment it's not moving at all. It's quite heavy and there's just a lot of sawdust everywhere and I need to clean it up. I need to paint everything and put it back together again. So let's unbolt the mechanism where the motor hangs in, and that way we can take the motor off. I left the V-belts on as it was easy to keep the motor hanging in the V-belts and then lift the motor out, as this one was really heavy and I didn't want to have to catch it up. Once I got it out, I could start with the saw blade, as I wanted to get the saw blade off as soon as possible, because that's really sharp and I don't want to hurt myself. So I got it loose and take it off. It's really important that I clean up all the threads, as these are quite special threads and I don't want to damage them. Now it's time to get the bearing house out for the table saw, and I just wanted to paint it, as the bearings, they feel quite okay, so I don't want to do anything on them at this moment. If I would have to do something on them later on, that's no issue at all, as it's easy to take this house out, so I don't want to worry about it at this moment. Next up is the lifting mechanism for the table saw blade. So the table saw blade can go up and down, and for that this arm on the right side is mounted. So first we take these inside hexagon bolts out, and then we can shove the pin out and get the complete lifting mechanism out, as this really needs cleaning, as it's all a bit rusted into place and there's a lot of sawdust in there. Now we can access the rear side of the pin and we can actually hammer it out, as this one was in more solid as it should be, so it took quite some hammering to get this one out. But once it came out, I could lift the complete mechanism out and we could start cleaning it any further on the workbench. Now I also like to clean up the adjustment wheel with a rack and pinion. This is to lift and lower the saw blade, and I want to take it out as it's turning quite heavy and it's quite rusted and dirty as well from the inside. So getting it out and cleaning it up completely will definitely make it rotate a lot better. You can see how much I need to hammer it to get it out. Every blank piece of the table saw was corroded, so I used a steel brush on the battery drill and also on the angle grinder a lot to clean everything up, and this worked really nice. I don't like to use grease or oil on the table saw, as it just attracts dust and that only makes the situation worse in the future. So it came down to completely cleaning up everything, make sure it's clean, and then assembling it again once I painted it. I prepared the control wheel for the height adjustment and also from the side adjustment by taking out all the plastic parts and paint the plastic parts separately black again, so they look nice already. And now we can start cleaning up the rest, and once that's cleaned I can just paint that all over and then it's working nice again. I also added some new special grease for the bearing house, that way I know the bearings will have some fresh grease again. They don't make any noise, so I don't take it apart. I just greased it a little bit and that should be good. I didn't add a grease nipple as I think it will attract dust as well, so the bolt should do the job. I also cleaned up all the flat and blank parts of the wall parallel mechanism, as this was all dusty and corroded, and by cleaning it up I know it will stay clean for a long while, as it's covered down there and it doesn't get high humidity, so it should stay clean and not corroded for a long while. The wall parallel mechanism is required for the riveting knife, so if the table saw blade comes up, the riveting knife should come up as well, but that one needs to stay parallel, otherwise it would hit the wood or it wouldn't be high enough. So I really need to make sure that this mechanism works perfectly, that way I can work in a safe way with this table saw. And now it's time to take out the complete tilting mechanism. So this table is able to tilt until a maximum of 45 degrees. So I can make cuts on 45 degrees, and that didn't want to move at all. So I needed to clean everything up from this. I decided it would be worth a try to put the guidance rails onto the lathe and just clean them up on the lathe, as these were really corroded. And in the lathe I could get them nice and shiny and even again, as the part is rotating. For the bed of the table saw I figured using the angle grinder with an aggressive steel brush would really make sense, as the bed was really corroded and I just wanted to get it completely clean, and after cleaning it up I could use a candlelight to actually grease it up. Let's remove the motor controller and then we can finally sand the complete base of the table saw. Once we got it sanded nice and flat, we can paint the whole table saw, get it all in a nice green color and let it dry for a few days. I decided to paint everything in the workshop, as it was only a small paint job and it was really bad weather outside, so it was a good thing to paint this inside. Unfortunately I forgot some parts to paint, so I had to paint them on later on. I did it afterwards, but unfortunately it is not in the video, as I had to wait for another painting round on some other equipment when I did the same color of paint. Putting back everything together went really nice, because I did a good cleaning job and I know it just goes through without any hammering this time, and it really felt solid and good to get everything into place without any issues. So now all the controls of the saw operate like they were brand new, and everything was also looking quite good in the new color. So this is actually the original color from the Wadkin saw, and yeah, it looks awesome in my opinion. So I could adjust everything so it works flawlessly and perfect with the right tension on every part. So I can still rotate it easily, but it doesn't have any play, as you don't want to have any play on parts to make precision cuts with. You might be noticing that it didn't paint the inside, and I did that on purpose, as it wasn't painted perfectly when it was new either. And you cannot look at the inside, it doesn't become moisturous on the inside, and everything just works perfectly now it isn't painted. If I would paint the inside, then I would still have to get everything blank, which needs to be blank, after painting it. That would be a lot of hassle for something that people can never see. So it made sense to just not paint it and only paint all the parts which are visible to the outside. I really like how the brand of Wadkin Bursgreen is made on a special plate onto the saw, and unfortunately the previous owner painted it blue, and I really like to give it a bit more contrast, so instead of making it original I decided to paint it red and then sand over with sandpaper, so the text comes out in the steel color again, and that gives a really nice outstanding look of the brand name, and I really like how that one turned out. After we put the table on, I could also clean up the slats of the table, as I completely forgot that when I was working with the angle grinder. I couldn't get in there properly either, so I did it with the battery drill and the steel brush on there, and that cleaned it up really nice. Now the guidance rails could be placed back on, and eventually also the guide itself, and it slid on really easily. It wouldn't move anywhere on the beforehand as everything was corroded. Guidance rail did have one issue, and that was the slack on the rear side. So if I tightened it up, the rear side could still wobble around, and that was just because of the lack of a pin. So I had to redo this pin, and then it would lock up perfectly again. The plank on the guidance rail was also really damaged, so I took it off, I sanded it completely, and I decided to put it back on upside down, so that way all the damage that was on there would not be visible anymore, and I would have a nice straight line again as a guiding rail. I did reuse this plank because this is hardwood and I don't have hardwood on the shelf. I could have bought some, but this also works and it looks just as good. So I painted the complete guide rail, and now you can also see the pin which I had to fix on the side which was working. But on the opposite side this pin is also coming out, and that way the guide rail locks on both sides, and you know for sure you get a straight cut. Now the table saw is completely finished, so we got the saw completely in green, and also the guide rail is on top of there. So take a look around what it looks like when it's done. The saw blade comes up and down really easily, and that was one of the goals, that it all would move easy, and that's what it does. I also put a nail in here so I can see exactly how much I'm moving forward, and this seems to work really nice. I just had to calibrate it once and it has been good since then. Now let's make some test cuts. Keep in mind, this was the very first time I would use a table saw myself, so I definitely had to learn how to use it. That's why the cuts are not perfect at this moment. Then I built this slat on top of it. This slat slides through the two rails which are there, and then I made a cut in the middle, so I know the blade is always coming through on the same spot. This way I can saw all kind of stuff which has to be short without having to worry about my hands. I can just hold this jig and push it over, and I know I get a nice cut. The first thing I used my table saw for was to make a distribution from the drawers of my workbench, as everything was sliding through and I just didn't have a way to cut wood before, so it was really nice to have this table saw by now. Later on I came to the conclusion that I wanted a bigger table on the saw, but it should only be big if I was sawing, so it should be foldable. So I started coming up with a frame. I made it rotatable so it could fold up and down, and I welded a nice table on it, which is actually just mounted on there, so it's not solid on there. And this way I can just extend this table. If I'm sawing, then I can push stuff over and it doesn't drop onto the ground. This really helps when you are sawing big plates of wood. By having this foldable, I could just put the table saw away with the forklift, and when I need to use it, I unfold it, and I can also pull out the extra extension. That way I can push over really long planks by my own, and I don't need a second person to catch up the plank on the other side of the saw. Now, that was 2018, now it's 2023, so I got this saw for 5 years already. I did want to make this video already for 3 years, but I just didn't have the time. And actually this spring we had a quiet spring, no night frost, a lot of work that we don't have to do. So I figured now might be the best time to edit this video again. So I did. So the idea of this video is that I hope my video editing skills have improved a bit since 2018, and that this video actually looks a lot better than the 2018 version. I played a bit with the audio, I made a voiceover on it, and I think all that adds for a nice video experience. And I have used it a lot for projects, so I'm really happy with this one. It's really holding up after its restoration, so I'm really happy. The paint didn't get scratches except for the backside, and that's just because I didn't have the extension at first. So in the first year when we saw wood with it, it would always drop down and hit the backside of the saw. Now I have the stable, so everything stays flat on there. It's really nice walking, and it just doesn't hit the saw anymore. So the saw stays in good condition this way. Since I restored this saw, I also made a new power cable on here. So I got a better connector, longer cable. There's a little bit of fly rust on the table, but it's already in use for 5 years. So sometimes it just catches up a bit of humidity outside. That's just what it is. At least it's working nice. I can make really nice projects with it. Just watch the video that you can see right here. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe so you get a notification when the next video comes online. Thank you for watching.